I think most people are just operating from a perspective of they're holding on to because they finally got to a place that was better than where they come from. And so they look at that as success versus looking at their capacity as success.
Yeah.
Right. They're not chasing their capacity. They're chasing better than what they had growing up.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? My name is Matthew Welsh, and welcome to the Leaders Only podcast, where we talk about business, leadership, mindset, and just pretty much anything revolved around building an incredible life. You know, the reason that I started this podcast is because I felt like on the way to where we're at now, there wasn't really a place to go learn tangible skill sets, leadership qualities, and mindset strategies that you can learn today, apply today, and get immediate results. And so the goal of this podcast is to teach you the things that you need to actually win, to actually change your life, and to actually grow your business and grow your team if you're someone that's in the leadership role. And so if you can do me a favor, if you ever get something out of our message, if you ever get something out of the content, if you can like, share, subscribe, just tell people about it. We put out all this information for free. And so all we ask is that you share it with a friend if you get something out of it. So with that being said, thank you guys so much, and let's tune in.
Let's go. I'm a big mood. You can't name a lot of things that I didn't.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Leaders Only podcast, where we talk about business, leadership, mindset, and just pretty much anything revolved around building an incredible life. And today we got another Q&A going on. I got my main man, Christopher Selassie, and he doesn't smoke, but it sounds like it after that introduction, doesn't it? I got my main man, Chris, the one and only. How are you, brother?
I'm great.
Except
you
for
came up with this random nickname. You've been using it the past 3 days, and I've never heard it before.
It's all good. Sometimes just got to roll with it.
Where did it derive from?
I listened to a reggae song the other day, and then you called me, and then from there, it was it.
Okay.
We were there. So yeah.
All right, perfect. I got to hear the song, I guess.
Well, good to have you, man. I know
Yeah.
we're gonna be together the next couple of days, which is pretty awesome, right? But today we're together right now
We are
in the same room.
Yep. Good, because I got some good questions for you.
Well, sounds good. Let's dive in.
Hopefully you're ready. Man, life's been kind of wild lately. I've been all over the place and moving from location to location, and my life's been a little bit chaotic. And so it's kind of inspired some of the questions I wanted to ask you, because I know that your life hasn't always been easy. It's never easy getting from, down here to where you've been able to elevate your life. So how have you been able to, in your experience, continue to show up and be an effective leader, even when it seems like your whole life is kind of falling apart around you?
Yeah. It's never easy, right? Because anytime life is going crazy, it's hard to show. It's not even that it's hard to show up and be an effective leader, because you know how to be an effective leader. Right?
Yeah.
It's just hard to operate in the level of with the same level of enthusiasm and
Or even get yourself
or
to
it at all, right? And I think for me, I've always just relied on routines. You know what I mean? Like routines that lead to me putting in the work, where I start my day every day the exact same way, which then leads to me executing. And so it's no longer about how I feel. It's just the next step in my day. You know what I mean? So I try to rely on my routines in those moments, because if I can just get myself there, at least I can get myself in the spirit of doing it. Right. But I think in those moments, I try to use those moments as an identity building moment. This is my separator. Everyone else that doesn't feel like doing something right now, they're the ones that let off the gas right here. They're the ones that get distracted. They're the ones that don't show up at the same level of excitement. They don't show up at the same level of enthusiasm. I said, what separates me is that I'm going to show up regardless of how I feel, with the same level of excitement, the same level of enthusiasm, the same level of positivity. And I want to prove to myself why I deserve to win. So I think in those moments, I have relied on a lot of my routines to just get me in the door. But I also try to just I try to prove to myself, how good could I be in this moment, right? I'll give you an example. And this is just a random situation, but we went on a family trip to West Palm Beach, Florida, right? And so as we were traveling back from Florida home, right, there was that computer crazy thing that happened that shut down all the airplanes or something like that, right? So we got stuck in Atlanta, Georgia, in the airport, and we were in the airport for 7 hours, right? And then the plane is literally sitting there, right? Everyone's annoyed. This place is like a can of sardines. There's just so many people everywhere in this airport. And that entire day was a frustrating day, obviously, right? And then the flight got canceled. And after staying there for 8 hours, we can see the plane. They literally said, hey, we're going to board in 10 minutes. We're like, oh, finally, right? And then they canceled it. And then we get down, we go to try to get our luggage, and they're like, no, sorry, your luggage will arrive in San Diego whenever you get back home in a couple of days, right? And I got a 7-month-old, a 3-year-old. All of our stuff was in the bags outside of like your normal carry-on, right? So we had to go buy everything brand new. We dropped like $1,000 at Target just for those,
Couple days.
Yeah, just for those 2 days, just because we didn't have anything. Like we didn't have socks, we didn't have nothing, right? And so we couldn't get a flight home for 2.5 days, right? And so even though all of this was happening, like when that day started, like when the first adversity hit, where it's like, all right, this flight's being delayed, I just made a decision in my mind. I want to prove to myself how positive I can be in this moment, right? Like I just want to prove to myself, like I want, regardless of the chaos that's going on in the airport, regardless of the chaos that's going on in the travel, I just want to prove to myself that I'm not like every other person that's in that airport. Because everyone in that airport was frustrated, yelling, screaming, mad, complaining, whining. They were just operating out of a negative state. And I just made the conscious decision. I was like, I'm not going to be like everyone else in this airport, right? It doesn't mean I wasn't annoyed or whatever it is. Like there were certain moments, but I tried to turn everything into the most positive moment that I could possibly. I just tried to turn everything into a positive.
It's hard to do.
Right? It was very hard. But I was just trying to prove to myself. So I almost played this game with myself. How positive can I be in this negative moment?
Yeah.
How positive can I be in this negative moment? And it just became this game. But what was the most powerful part about that entire day was we get home or get back to the hotel that we finally found, because we had to call like 87 hotels to get a hotel because everybody's flights got canceled. So they were all looking for hotels too. But we get back to the hotel. It's like 11:45 at night. And I asked my daughter, Brave, I go, how was your day? And she goes, I had the most amazing day. Right. And so we traveled the entire day. She's like, my day was absolutely amazing, because at the end of the day, it didn't matter. All that mattered was she was with the people that she loved. Right. She was with me. She was with, her mom. She was with her sister. And we were all together. So the people that mattered most to her in her life were all there together. So it was like she blocked out all the negativity because she didn't understand what negativity even is. Yeah. So she was just operating in bliss in any given moment because she was just present, trying to live a good life, right? So I think kind of going back to it is we got to bring out like that childlike part of us where life's not that bad unless we frame it as something bad.
Right.
Her frame is everything's a playground. Mm-hmm. The airport's a playground. The terminal is a playground. The airplane itself is a playground, because that's her frame of it.
Right.
And I think if we can shift our frame to positivity, gratitude, right? I want to prove to myself that I'm not like everyone else in this airport, that I'm the most positive person regardless of the circumstances, right? I'm going to prove that to me. So at the end of this day, when I put my head on the pillow, I know I'm not like everyone else out there, right? And I think if we can start to shift our frame a little bit, it helps a lot, So I think just just remaining effective, right? And still showing up regardless is in those moments, can you show up and say, all right, this is a moment where I have the opportunity. This is a moment where I have the opportunity to define who I am, right? Because the true character of an individual is not defined when things are good. The true character of an individual is defined when things are bad. And if you know that, now you can start to say, all right, this is my shot to prove to myself why I deserve to have success. This is why I deserve to have the life that I want to have. So I've always looked at moments like that as opportunities to validate my belief on why I deserve to win in life.
Yeah.
Versus using it as a reason why I didn't win that month.
That's super good. Were you always like that? Or was like there a time where negative circumstances happened that were pretty severe and they kind of consumed you versus, like the things that you got to do on a daily basis, and this kind of took over what you're traditionally trying to focus on?
What do you mean?
I mean, like, let's say something crazy in your life happens, like maybe a death of somebody really close to you, or something bad happens. Has something like that ever consumed you to the point to where you can't be, or maybe I shouldn't say can't, but didn't show up as effective because that was so consuming for you? And if not, how did you get yourself to not allow it to consume you and focus on the task at hand?
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I've always just used things as like a coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like my outlet has always been my work.
Yeah.
So because my outlet's always been my work,
allowed you to be more effective.
It's allowed me to be more effective. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So like, for instance, I remember my dad died on a Sunday. And for those of you know, I know you know this, but my dad was my hero.
Yeah.
Right. And so my dad died on a Sunday, and the next day I ran appointments all day long, ran a training call for a couple hundred people that evening. Right. And it wasn't that I wasn't sad in between those appointments, but it was my happy place.
Yeah.
Like, building a business is my happy place. Scaling my company is my happy place. So it was my coping mechanism. Right. And I think over the years, what's kind of crazy is that every single time I've been in pain, it's led to me getting really good at something. Right. Some of the things that I got really good at served me. Some of the things that I got really good at didn't. Right. Like, I remember when my dad first got sick, right? That's when I really got good at soccer, because it became one of my coping mechanisms. Like, it was like I would just play all day long, because if I was focused on playing the game, I wasn't focused on what my family was going through at the time, right? So when I saw my abilities in soccer scale, and looking back at it, was when my dad got sick, because it was an outlet for me, right? And then when I stopped playing sports, right, and my dad got sick again, it became partying for me. So I became like a master partier.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that's a thing, right? But like,
The best partier there ever was.
I just became an incredible partier, and I was drinking nonstop and partying all the time. And I got really good at, all the drinking games. Like, I was phenomenal at all the drinking games, like, would play in beer Olympics and all these different things, right? But it was a coping mechanism, because I was trying to distract myself from the pain, right? And then I realized that that's not who I wanted to be. And so I literally shut that off cold turkey, and then went into business. And then I remember going into business, and within 30 days, again, my dad was on his deathbed, right? And so once again, business became my coping mechanism. It became the one place that I can go and I can distract myself from what was going on in my life. I can isolate myself and just work and build something, right?
Yeah.
And so business became my outlet, right? It became my outlet to all the pain that I was going through. So I think every single time I experience pain, I actually turn to my work. I turn to my business. I turn to showing up, because it makes me feel better, because how do you fill your own cup? You fill other people's. And I'm in a business, and you're in a business, where our entire life is built around filling other people's cups and helping other people become better. So I realized that the only way to make me feel better about what was going on in my life, is to help other people feel better. And so that served me. It was like serving people became selfish.
Yeah.
It was like my selfish need was serving people, because it was the only way that I can make myself feel better about what I was going through. Right. So like, when my dad died and showing up the next day, like, as much as I showed up for our people that day, what I really showed up for was me.
Yeah.
Because it's what allowed me to make it through it. And is that healthy? Probably not. Most psychiatrists or psychologists, whatever you want to call them, will probably be like, you got to deal with your pain. Like, that's how I've dealt with all my pain. It's led to me getting better at what I do.
Totally. Controversial opinion. Someone's going to say, well, how do you fill other people's cups when yours is empty? Right. So if you are going through something as severe as that, you would think that that's probably a pretty empty cup. But
but it doesn't, but that's where, let's counter that.
Yeah.
Right. If all of a sudden adversity happens, does that mean all my knowledge, all my experience, and all my abilities just get flushed away all of a sudden? No, they're all still there, right? There's just a block that's keeping you from executing upon those things.
Yeah.
So when my dad died, it's not like my knowledge, my skill sets, my abilities just went away, right? So my cup was never empty. My cup was still full, right? There was just something keeping me from wanting to pour it out into other people. Make sense? So that's what I would say. It's like, it's not like my cup was empty in those moments. It's like my cup was still full in those moments. Most people just choose not to, overflow into other people and fill their cups in those moments.
Yeah. And maybe helping other people does fill your cup for you, even if it was empty.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly it. But then I also look at it as like, what would my dad want me to be doing in that moment? Like, do you think he would want me to be sitting around mourning?
Absolutely not.
Or do you think he'd be wanting me to chase my dreams, which is what he wanted me to do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I also looked at it a way as like, I'm going to honor him, right? But I think it was part coping, part honoring, part selfish need to focus on other people. So that way I wasn't focusing on what I was going through in that moment. And by me focus on serving people, it truly served me in the moment.
Yeah. That's crazy that you were thinking like that when you were so young, going through something like that. Most people would not be able to like have that kind of a clear opinion on, oh, hey, this is what he would want me to be doing. And you were able to block out the noise and do that. That's pretty incredible. So,
but I also think it's like I prepared my mind for all these things.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, I think if you're not expecting the punch, when it hits, it hits.
yeah.
I just like I don't expect the punch to the point that I attract it, right? Like I don't attract. At least I try not to attract adversity into my life, because most of the adversity we experience in our life is self-inflicted, right? So I don't want to do that. But what I will tell you is that I know adversity is coming. I always know adversity is coming. So I already made a decision in my mind how I'm going to deal with anything, right? I've already made the decision.
Sign the contract up front.
I signed a contract with myself up front that it doesn't matter what happens, this is how I'm going to deal with it. I already signed that contract. So when people say, how do you make the right decision? There's no decision to be made. The decision has been made, right? The decision's already been made. So if you were leaving it up to a decision that needs to be made, we've already lost.
Yeah.
Right. So I try to make all the decisions up front, so I never have any decision to be made. Right. This is why, like, you know, people always talk about having core values is so important. You have core values. Now, when the decision needs to be made, there's no decision.
Right.
It either falls in line with your core values or it doesn't. If it doesn't, there is no decision. The decision's already been made. So I try to look at everything in my life that way. If I can already pre-make all the decisions, by the time the decisions, quote unquote, arrive, they've already been answered. So I can just focus on doing what I need to do.
Yeah.
So I've already signed the contract with myself. How I deal with adversity, how I deal with problems, how I deal with anything. I've already signed all these contracts. They're already written. They're already in stone.
That's really legit. That's something everybody can take away. Let's shift gears a little bit, because we always talk about motivation, discipline, diligence, or I should say you always talk about it. And you're big on diligence, right? Which is getting yourself to do the things that, you know, you need to do even when you don't feel like it, but say it how you say it.
Yeah. Well, motivation is getting yourself to do the things that you, when you do feel like it. Discipline is getting yourself to do things when you don't feel like it. Diligence is getting yourself to do things when you don't feel like it, as if you do feel like it, right? So it's showing up with the same level of enthusiasm as you would if you woke up that day and it's been your dream your whole life to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're definitely a diligent leader. The way that you operate is for sure diligence. Because you know, not everybody knows, but I know when something's going on, just because we're pretty close here and there, but you would never be able to tell based on the way that you operate. And that's something that I look up to in you for sure. But where would you say that motivation plays a part? Because I know that it's so temporary. People rely on the motivation all the time, which I think is a recipe for disaster. But where does it play a part?
I don't know. I think like when you're feeling motivated, that's when you should throw the gas on what you're doing, right? Because dude, all the time I'm not motivated. I'm like the most ambitiously lazy person you'll ever meet.
I can relate.
Like, do you know when people? This drives me nuts. When people are like, dude, you got to have dreams so important. Your dreams wake you up. You are out your mind. Every day I hit snooze 3 times. You know what I mean? Like people are like, oh, if you know, like all of that. Like I just think it's all a bunch of crap. You know what I mean? 9 times out of 10, I'm not motivated, right? But when I am feeling motivated, that's when I go super hard because there's momentum behind me. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think when you're feeling motivated, that's momentum. Like that is you're up to bat, right? And you got 100-mile-per-hour wind behind you, because that's the energy you're operating with. That's the excitement that you're operating with. So whenever I'm feeling motivated, that's when I go extremely hard. That's when I lock in. That's when I dial in, because there's days that you feel more motivated than others, which means that I might change even my schedule around a little bit. Right? If there's things that need to be done and I'm like operating in a flow state, a peak state, like I'm going to run with it. Like I'll give you an example. The other day, I was like on this motivated tip and it like kicked in at 9:00 at night. Well, I ran with it.
I know, because my phone was getting blown up.
I ran with it. Like I didn't be like, oh, it's 9:00. I was like, no, like that motivation kicked in and I allowed that motivation to like carry momentum for me. And so I ended up going from 9 p.m. at night till 3 a.m. in the morning because motivation kicked in, and I got so much done in hours that I like wouldn't like, or that hours that most people wouldn't want to work, right? Like I got so much done because the motivation kicked in, and instead of just allowing it to go away, I capitalized on it. So I think that whenever you feel motivation, that's momentum behind you. That's the 100-mile-per-hour wind behind you. Capitalize on it. It doesn't matter what time it is. If you feel motivated at 9 p.m., then run with that. Because like I said, I was in a peak state. I was in a flow state. Things were flowing. Things were clicking. It's like a perfectly oiled engine that's just popping off. Like everything's popping off. The pistons are popping off. Like everything is just going the way that it needs to.
Yeah.
That's what motivation is, right? And so whenever you feel that, that's when you slam your foot on the gas and you run with it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I would say. I think motivation is the gasoline, but I don't think motivation is what makes you successful.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think so either. One thing I've noticed too about the way that you operate is it almost seems like you don't even think about the work anymore. It's just who you are. So do you think that maybe there's like a time period of you've been doing the same thing for so long, you've already built an incredible life. Obviously, as an entrepreneur, you always want to see what you're capable of, but do you think that it just becomes who you are after a certain point of consistency?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I don't think I've been asked that ever before.
When do you think that shift maybe happened for you?
I don't know if it ever, like, I can't pinpoint like a shift where it just worked out and like all of a sudden it was it. You know what I mean? I just think you build habits, right? You build rituals, you know what I mean? And so when something becomes a habit, it's no longer something you think about. It's like, do you think about brushing your teeth, or do you just do it in the morning and at night and after you eat, right? Like you just do it because it becomes it becomes second nature, right? So I think when you do something enough times, it becomes second nature. But like as a kid, right, I hated brushing my teeth. Like I used to like try to go to bed and my dad would walk in and be like, he would smell our breath. And if he saw us smile, then he was like, go brush your teeth. You know what I mean? Like me and my brothers like hated it. Right. So we didn't have that instinct. Now
I feel like that's like every little kid.
Oh, for sure. It's every little kid. Like we had to fight brave on brushing your teeth this morning. Right. So it is every kid. But like at one point that changes. Well, when does it change? Either A, like when you do it enough times where it's just become instinct, right? And or B, right? You get so sick and tired of having bad breath.
Yeah, you start to care about the result.
Yeah, you start to care about the result, right? So I think it's kind of the same thing where I care about the result, right? I care about the result. Like that matters to me, right? But then it's also now become instinct. So I think it's a combination of both. I care about the result and I care about and it's instinct. I've done it so many times that I don't think about it anymore. I just execute and do what I need to do. But I think at that moment though, like when it becomes instinct, that could also be a disadvantage.
Yeah.
And I think most people strive to get to a point where it's instinctual, which is awesome because you will become extremely successful. But it's also very, very easy to become complacent and or become stagnant and or just sustain at that moment because you lose intentionality, because you start relying on ability, you start relying on what you've worked so hard to create versus striving to get better at more, right? And so for me, I have to be intentional about my development because I know that the knowledge that I have right now from the business sense and how we're running things, we're popping off. Like we're grinding, we're moving, things are
be so easy
off.
to coast.
Oh my gosh, we can coast right now, and our income would still grow, our business would grow, we would continue to scale with the current knowledge I have right now. And seeking out new knowledge is exhausting, which is why most people don't do it. But right now, it's easier right now for me to get comfortable than ever before because of the fact that we built something that we couldn't stop even if we wanted to, right? So now it's requiring an even higher level of intentionality in my development, where I have to be intentional about, all right, am I developing? What am I developing on? Why am I developing on this? Is it important for me to be developing on this at all right now? Should I be developing on something else, right? So it becomes even more difficult at this time, right? It's hard to get the plane to 10,000 feet or 30,000 feet, whatever plane flies at, right? It's hard to get the plane up there, right? But eventually that plane will run out of gas unless we can continue to feed the plane what it needs. Make sense? And what happens is most people get their plane up, they stop feeding the plane, and the plane ends up crashing, right? Well, that's where you have to be intentional. So
That's
my
so true.
fear, one of the things that keeps me going to this day and my personal development and my growth is I'm afraid of my plane crashing.
Ooh. So you're afraid that, and I totally can understand that from a smaller scale, but you're afraid that if you get to a point where you know the thing would continue to grow, but you have that thought in the back of your head, if you coast, then that's going to set an example, which is going to lead to your plane eventually crashing.
Yeah. And part of it too is just like, I'm such a believer that you will never out earn your self-worth. And the moment you stop personally growing and personally developing, you start to lose your self-worth.
So true.
I feel like it's in most people's human instincts to self-sabotage their own success.
That's totally
and
true.
so I'm afraid to self-sabotage my own success, which is why I'm so aggressive about making sure that I continue to grow.
Yeah. Have you ever done that? Self-sabotaged?
Everybody's self-sabotaged.
Was there a defining moment where you're like, dang, I did this really heavy right here. I'm never going to do that again. And that's when you decided.
I think that the biggest spikes in our career have come from sabotage. Right? The difference is we got back up afterwards.
Yeah.
Most people don't.
Right.
Right? So like every downfall in our business ever has been because of some level of self-sabotage. Doesn't matter how you slice and dice it. Right? People are like, well, no, it was this person. You chose to associate with them.
Yeah. And
there's a part of you that felt like that was okay. Right?
Mm-hmm. It's also relinquishing responsibility. And then, yeah, as a leader, you have to take responsibility.
100%. So that's one of the things that keeps me going. I'm afraid of my plane crashing. And we built something that is pretty phenomenal. And, we're just getting started. But part of me obsessing about the personal growth, obsessing about getting better, obsessing about the knowledge and the development. And one of the reasons I'm working so hard, right, is because that fear.
Yeah. Fear is a great driver. It's a great driver. I think that sometimes people look at fear and then they kind of cower down and they don't do anything, but you can use that as a motivating factor to keep going, right? So that could be the gasoline to get to diligence if you utilize it properly. I have a question about hard work, because you said you're ambitiously lazy, which I relate to on a spiritual level. I am super ambitiously lazy, but you work freaking hard. So do you think that hard work is a learned skill, or do you think it's just in your DNA?
Yeah, I think it's 100% learned. But I also think I think there is endurance that you build up in your work ethic, right? So for instance, if I work an 8-hour day, I feel like I failed the day. I feel like I failed. I felt like I didn't get anything done. No part of me feels like I won that day. You know what I mean? And so it's because my endurance is so high. It's for instance, if you're used to running 20 miles and then you run 5 miles,
you're going to feel like a failure.
You're going to be like, dude, I got 15 miles left in the tank right now. You almost have anxiety, right? You need to go back and run. Well, that's how I feel, right? Whenever I don't max out an entire day, I don't freaking, I don't own the day, I feel anxiety. So I get anxiety from not working now, right? And I know it sounds kind of crazy, but if I don't crush the day, I get anxiety. I feel like I failed the day. I feel like I let myself down. I feel like I let my team down. I feel like I let the people around me down. And it's just because my endurance is so high now. You know what I mean? I can work. I know I'm capable of working 18 hours. I know I'm capable of working starting at 5 a.m. and working all the way through the night and then working all the next day. Yeah. Because I've done that multiple times this year.
That's why I said the work is who you are earlier, because it's just who you are. If you don't work, then you have anxiety. So that means that you can almost never stop working because it's not who you are.
Well, I think here's the difference is I'm building my life's work. What I do is not what I do. It's my life's work.
Yeah.
If you're listening right now, what is your life's work? What is going to be your life's work? Right? And I think about that. And this is that for me, when I'm 75, 85, 95, I'm probably still going to be busting it the same way. And it's not that you don't have fun along the way. Trust me, we have a blast, but this is my life's work and I want to see my life's work through, So that's why I'm able to work as many hours as I do. it's what I do while I'm on this earth is what I'll be remembered for. And I don't want to just be another person that died that nobody remembers. And it's not about the prestige or the famous or any of that. It's about just knowing that I left it all on the playing field and I emptied the tank. You know what I mean? I want to be proud of what I've built. I want to be proud of the marriage that I have. I want to be proud of the dad that I was. I want to be proud of the business that I've built, the lives that I've impacted. I want to be proud of those things. And I feel like if I do not max it out, I'm not going to be able to say I'm proud of me. And so I'm chasing the feeling of I'm proud of me. You know what I mean? Like I want to be able to say I did it. I'm proud of me. And yeah,
You're wired that way. That leads me to my next question. Why do you think some people aren't? Why do you think some people aren't wanting to max out their life and see what they're capable of? And do you think it's because they believe that they can't get to a certain level? Or do you think it's the way that society programs us to think that, we should just kind of go with the flow? Or what do you think? What's the separator between the people who are extremely ambitious and intentional with what they're doing in their life and the people who are just living free?
I think it's perspective. Like when you've had bad long enough, sometimes when you taste good, you think it's great. Right. And I think most people have had bad.
Mm-hmm.
So when they experience any level of good, they don't want to lose that because it's better than where they come from. And so because it's better than where they come from, they strive to not lose it. So they spend the majority of their time focused on sustaining and keeping and holding on to versus striving for more, because they're afraid that if they strive for more, they'll lose what they worked so hard to get in the first place.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's a big part of it. Right. Is like they're afraid to lose it.
Yeah.
Right. And that, there's a book called Outwitting the Devil, right? By
Mhm.
Napoleon Hill.
Great book.
And one of the things that he talks about in that book is sometimes he'll give people something prematurely so they don't strive for more because they become afraid to lose it. Or sometimes he'll give something to somebody prematurely and then knowing that they're not ready for it, so they self-sabotage it. So then they fear having to put in the work necessary in order to get it back. So then they just say, you know what? That was difficult. I'll just decide to stay where I'm at and be complacent. Right. So I think most people are just operating from a perspective of they're holding on to because they finally got to a place that was better than where they come from. And so they look at that as success versus looking at their capacity as success.
Yeah.
Right. They're not chasing their capacity. They're chasing better than what they had growing up. And that's the difference.
Wow. Yeah, that's really good. Why do you think people self-sabotage? Because they're afraid to lose it?
I think people self-sabotage because they acquire more than they feel they deserve. Right?
So they're not working on themselves. They're not personally developing. They're not putting in the work, and they're receiving the reward without the work, and so they don't feel worthy of it.
They don't feel worthy of it. And so because they don't feel worthy of it, they sabotage what got it. They sabotage what got them that in the first place.
So everything stems to you have to put in the work in order to get the result. Because even if you get the result without the work, you're eventually going to sabotage because you don't feel like you deserve the result.
Yeah. That's why people, like there's been people, this is crazy to me, but there's been people who've won the lottery twice. Like just imagine winning it once, let alone twice.
Yeah.
And they blew it all and filed bankruptcy.
Insane.
Because if you do not feel worthy of it, because you didn't earn it and it was given to you, most time you'll self-sabotage. Like if you think about it, I forgot exactly what the statistic is, but most wealth is lost within 2 generations of the person who created the wealth to dying.
Wow.
How crazy is that?
That's sad.
Because of the worthiness.
Yeah.
It was passed down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
it was given, not earned.
It was given, not earned.
Yeah. So, okay. I got a really good question then, because this is something that I follow a ton of entrepreneurs who are, billionaires, and they're raising amazing kids. Like for an example, Grant Cardone, his kids are freaking awesome in my opinion. The way he raises them is pretty inspiring. How do you instill work and effort into your kids when they grew up with an amazing lifestyle? Like, it's easy for me to be like, hey, I want more out of life because I didn't grow up with this crazy, amazing lifestyle. But, if I build an awesome life to where, I'm financially free and so are my kids and future generations, how do you instill the work ethic and the grit and the value of money into those kids?
I don't have an answer. And the only reason I don't have an answer is because my kids are not old enough for me to tell you that it works. You know what I mean? So I don't want to give people advice on this subject just because my daughter's 3 and my daughter's 7 months, right? Yeah. So I can't look at it and be like, hey, this is what I did and this is why they're so amazing. Like, I don't know, right? Based off what I've studied, it's just intentionality, right? Like, I don't give things to my daughters. I make them fight for it, if that makes sense. I don't do things for them, right? Because if I do things for them, then they won't learn how to do things for themselves. Obviously, my 7-month-old is a little bit different.
Yeah,
right?
You're teaching them initiative though.
Exactly. So like I'm teaching initiative. So every single time, like Brave's like, Daddy, help. I tell her, you don't need my help. You can do it. You can figure this out. You got this. And I'll be there for her, right? So she knows I'm there to support her, but she knows I'm not going to do things for her. And that's a little thing that I do, right? And I've seen it work so far because Brave has just unwavering confidence, right? And it's the little things. Like, we go to the playground. I think most, like, even we'll be at the playground, she'll be climbing something and she'll like slip and fall and kind of hold. And she's like, Daddy, help. Nope, you got it. Figure out a way to pull yourself up. Figure out a way to get yourself back to where you need to be. You know what I mean? So like, I'm trying to instill self-confidence. I think the number one thing that a parent can teach their child is self-confidence.
Yeah.
Right. I would say there's two things. I think there's two things that if a parent can instill in their child, they will have some incredible children, based off my perspective so far. Number one, can you instill confidence? And these aren't in any particular order. Can you instill confidence, right? So like when my daughter brings something to me and she goes, Daddy, do you love it? My response is, how do you feel about it? Because I don't want her perspective of whether or not something's great to be determined by me. I want her to have her own
internal validation.
Exactly. So I'm trying to teach her to validate herself versus needing my validation, right?
Yeah.
So teaching her self-confidence. And then every time she needs help, right? Saying, hey, you can do this. I'm here to help you. I'm here to support you, but you can do this. All right, figure it out. You got it. You got it. You can do this. It could be climbing the biggest tower at the playground. It doesn't matter what it is, right? I just really intentionally try to help her do everything on her own. So that way she doesn't need me. So I can instill that self-confidence of anything I put my mind to, I can do, right? The second thing is building a relationship with her creator. Somebody asked me a question yesterday. I had about 30 people over at our house for like a mentorship, question. And she asked me this question about why, like, I'm naturally a pessimist person, but in the most optimistic way, which is kind of weird, right? I just think through all the negatives, not like with the intention to be negative. I think through all the negatives with the intention to be proactive, right? And that's just kind of how my mind works. But she asked me a question like, how do you have this unwavering belief and faith that everything's going to be okay? And I realized that it's because my parents instilled faith into me, where it's like, it's my true north. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like I walk around with this compass knowing what true north is all the time.
Yeah.
And it's because of my relationship, the relationship that I have with my creator, right? And my parents instilling that faith in me. And obviously as a kid, you're like, whatever, you just kind of shrug it away. But then every single time I've ever done something that I'm not proud of in my life, right? I always knew, because I knew, like, why are you not proud of it? Because you know what true north is and it's not in alignment with it.
Right.
Makes sense? So I think there's part of that. But then also when you have this, this faith that, how could this problem be big if my God is bigger? Right? So I don't look at any challenge or any task based off my own capacity. I look at my creator's capacity, which makes everything micro, because there's no limit to that capacity. Make sense? So it doesn't matter the challenge. It doesn't matter the problem. It doesn't matter the circumstance. It's micro, right? If I'm comparing it to my own abilities, well then yeah, it might look big, but I don't compare anything to my own abilities, because I know that I gotta work like it's up to me, but know that it's in God's hands. And I think if we can teach our children to have relationships with their creator, and we can instill that true north of faith into them, they're just different.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, it does. It totally does. Do you think that well, in my opinion, it does, but do you think that it requires you to be the example of that for them to
oh yeah,
fall in alignment?
yeah. Like I one of the reasons I'm that way is because that's how my parents were.
Yeah.
Right. Like, my mom is fearless. She's just a fearless person. Right. And her thing is always like, well, if it's my time, it's my time, and I know where I'm going.
Yep.
So she just operates with this fearless mentality because she's like, I know what I believe in. I know where I'm going. I know that this world is temporary. So if God calls me home, I know it's better than where I'm at.
Yeah.
Right. So like, there's just like this, once again, overwhelming, everything's going to be okay.
It's like a peace.
Yeah. Like there's just this overwhelming peace at all times. So I don't mind attacking big goals or attacking big dreams because I'm always operating with a level of peace. Right. And my thought is like, all right, well, if I try and I fail and I die, I know where I'm going, and that place is awesome.
Yeah.
Right. If I try and I fail and I don't die, well, I have a chance to try again. Right. Like I still got another chance to go do this thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, well, I think we just got to try until we finally figure it out.
Love it. I love it. Well, I think ending on faith is a good note to end it on. I think
couldn't agree more.
I think that was solid.
Today was a good combo.
Appreciate you.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yes. Well, guys, thank you for tuning in. I forgot how this is supposed to end, so I'm just gonna roll with it, right? If you got something out of today's message, do me a favor, like, share, subscribe, tell somebody about it. We obviously put out all this information for free. All we ask is that you tell a friend about it. So thank you guys so much. We'll see you guys next week.
Let's get it. 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 Let's get it.